Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reading a post from Alexander Dugan and providing our commentary on it. Alexander Dugan is a major political thinker and philosopher within Russia, and I do believe that he's been very prophetic. So this is on the Middle East and eschatological scenario. And this is one potential scenario of what can occur given the ongoing Palestinian crisis. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I've been covering that pretty much every day because of how important this crisis is and how it is reshaping the world. So let's see how Alexander Dugan thinks things may proceed going forward. He says that the Palestinian uprising begins in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And I think that's already kind of ongoing, where Hamas is not in the West Bank, it is in Gaza. And yet the Israelis are bombing various places within the West Bank. And so you have to ask yourselves, if Hamas isn't there, and this is supposedly retaliation for what Hamas did, why are they attacking the West Bank? And it's probably because of Israel's belief in collective responsibility. So all Palestinians, all Arabic people, all Muslim people, they believe, I think, are responsible for the Hamas attack. And so they're using collective responsibility, collective punishment in order to strike at the West Bank, even though Hamas isn't there. Fatah cannot contain the situation, Alexander Dugan says. Seeing Israel carrying out a full-blown genocide in the Gaza Strip, the Palestinians launch an all-out revolt. It's already somewhat ongoing. The IDF continues to annihilate civilians in the Gaza Strip. There are growing protests around the world against Western pro-American liberal elites standing unanimously in favor of Israel. That's been really cool for me, which is seeing that I've had this belief system and I've kept quiet about it for a decade now. And hearing and seeing that so many other people are starting to buy into the beliefs that I think are going to lead to a better world, that are going to lead to the prosperity of the various unique human civilizations, I'm hyped for it. I'm here for this. So the fact that we're finally winning the propaganda war after all of this time is a great thing. It's a great thing to see. Okay. And it's also a good thing to see just who the enemies are and what the dividing lines are really going to be. You have the kind of World Economic Forum, globalist elite, the banking cartels, the major forces of capital. And really, it seems like this conflict is unveiling that all those forces are Zionist-controlled forces. And so we're seeing that it is going to be the Zionist, the Jewish Zionists leading them, the Christian Zionists and Muslim Zionists being golems to them. And then you're seeing all the non-Zionist forces on the other side fighting against Zionism. And so those are the dividing lines of what I think are going to be World War III. It's the forces of Zionism versus the forces of anti-Zionism, non-Zionism, whatever you really want to call it. Okay. Hezbollah gets involved. So Alexander Dugan goes on to say, Hezbollah gets involved in crowds of Arabs from Jordan breakthrough cordons at the border. Yeah, we wish this was happening more, but we're seeing more and more evidence that the Americans and Israelis have really strong control over places like Jordan and places like Saudi Arabia. So we're not seeing as much resistance from these areas very close in proximity to Israel and to Palestine, and it's very unfortunate. It looks like if things are going to happen in the Sunni Muslim world, it's going to be up to Turkey at this point. Or maybe you could have the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt start to fight and take over, because I have some other videos that we're going to talk about. They've outright, like the Muslim Brotherhood, the various religious organizations backing them have declared war on Israel. So I think that might be a huge deal. I've not seen people really talking about it, but we're going to talk about that on this channel in another video. Anyways, Alexander Dugan goes on to say, the U.S. launches preemptive strikes against Iran, which there were 7 nations. Oh, I can't remember the name of it specifically. Wait, let me check really quickly. Was it Operation Operation Clean Break. Was that what it was called? Hold on a second. Operation Clean Break. No. Oh, wait, it is. I think it is. Wait, let me just check really quickly. Yes. Okay. Yes, it was Operation Clean Break, which involved attacking, I believe it was 7 different countries. Okay, so if you want to learn more about this, I would encourage you to look up Operation Clean Break. And Iran is one of those 7 countries that the neocons, which are Zionists within the United States, have been fomenting war for forever. It was places like Somalia, which America has fought against, places like Syria, America has fought against, Iraq, Afghanistan, America has fought against, and Iran was on that list too. And so the United States has been foaming at the mouth to take down the Iranians, however you pronounce that. And so I think that's going to be pretty likely to happen, that America has preemptive strikes against Iran. You've seen so many politicians calling for it. You've even seen Americans assassinate Iranians within foreign countries. So when Soleimani was assassinated within Iraq, which is against international law, and I will bring that up every chance I can because America is an evil, evil empire. Okay, the U.S. launches preemptive strikes against Iran, Alexander Dugan says, which is increasingly involved in the conflict, and they launch strikes against Israel. Okay, that is more likely to occur by the day. Syria enters the war. They're pretty much already in the war because Israel's bombing them anyways, and Syria would attack the Golan Heights. There's a rapid mobilization of the entire Islamic world. And again, I think it's kind of a domino thing. We've already somewhat seen it with Yemen, but Yemen is such a weird country just because of the pretty much permanently ongoing civil war going on there, that it's hard to use Yemen as kind of the domino effect there. I think what you really need is a Sunni Muslim power to declare war on Israel for the others to fall in line. And I think it's going to, ideally it would be Turkey, but we're seeing that Turkey is extremely weak. Erdogan, he likes the attention, he likes to be liked, but he's not really willing to take the initiative and be the leader in these types of situations. And I'm going to talk about this in another video as well. Okay, so we see the pro-American states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., are forced to join the confrontation on the side of the Palestinians. This has been a tough one. I'm going to talk about this in another video as well. We have so many videos, but Saudi Arabia is apparently getting missile defense systems to shoot down rockets targeting Israel. So they're supposed to be the defenders of the Islamic world, and I don't know what MBS is doing. We really do need another video just talking about MBS because he's been waffling back and forth. I thought he completely betrayed the Western alliance by joining BRICS and being so friendly to China, but then at the same time, he's doing all these things to help out Israel, and I just don't. I thought MBS was a political mastermind with some of his earlier moves, and so now these moves, we're going to have to talk about it in a separate video because it's very interesting. UAE, I can't remember, I think it was the Yemenis who said that UAE was actually actively involved in the attacks on Palestine by Israel. So that would be concerning if true. So these are very pro-American states, although UAE is at the very least symbolically providing efforts in the United Nations to fight against what Israel and what United States is doing in the genocide of Palestine. Okay, so they say the various Islamic states are going to be joined by Pakistan. That's what Alexander Dugan says. Turkey and Indonesia. Story sending the Taliban to the Middle East from fake news becomes reality. Story of sending the Taliban to the Middle East from fake news becomes reality. I don't know what they're saying about that because, I mean, the Taliban is already in the Middle East, so I don't, maybe I'm not getting a joke here that Alexander Dugan is apparently making. Okay, the black banners of Khorasan are hoisted over the world. Problems between Salafists and traditionalists, including Shiites, fade into the background. The great jihad of the Islamic world against the West and Israel begins. Yeah, that's occurring more and more, where you saw people who were against Assad now being like, well, he is fighting for Palestine, and then there were people against Yemen, and they're like, well, Yemen is the only one to declare war so far on Israel over what it's doing in Palestine. And then there are people against Iran, and then are like, well, Iran is supplying equipment and financial backing and technical and logistical help to Palestine. So it's really hard for Sunni Muslims right now to be like anti-Shia, because the various Shia groups within the world seem to be the ones that are defenders of the Islamic faith. And then you have places like Saudi Arabia, which in control of the two holiest sites of Islam, and they are purchasing missile defense systems from America in order to stop rockets from hitting Israel. So it's really, this couldn't get any weirder. And then we're going to have another video on how it seems to be countries outside of the Middle East that are most likely to be actively taking actions to support Palestine right now. But that's a whole nother video. There's just so much to go over, so much intricacies to this situation that we're going to be talking about. So Alexander Dugan goes on to say, the great jihad of the Islamic world against the West and Israel begins. He says that Russia will take a neutral stance, but is slow to support Israel as it is at war with Ukraine in the West, which in turn is completely on Israel's side. Okay, so I don't know here. I think Putin himself is he has a affinity for Israel. He has sympathies for Israel, but given the situation and given really some of his strongest supporters are actually Muslims, I don't know how they can really stay neutral for overly long. I do think that Alexander Dugan is getting into that a little bit here. Although, wait, how much do I want to say what I'm about to say? All right, I'm going to say it anyways. Russia chased out a lot of the oligarchs from the Yeltsin era. However, the oligarchs that he allowed to stay were also of the same Zionist faith as the ones that kind of fled. And so he has a bit of a balancing act here where his strongest supporters are typically Muslims in a lot of cases, the Dagestanis, the Chechens, things like that. Kadyrov, the leader of Chechnya. And that's great, but then he also has to balance, and the reason Alexander Dugan is probably saying this here about taking a neutral stance, he has to balance the fact that the oligarchs within Russia are not ethnically Russian. They are ethnically of the same faith as the Zionists. I don't know how much more I want to say there, but you're welcome to look up what ethnic group the oligarchs typically are. And so Putin has to be careful here because he remembers the 1990s where these oligarchs raped and pillaged the entire Slavic world, all of Eastern Europe there. So it's tough for him. He's in a really difficult spot right now. At some point in the uprising in East Jerusalem, Palestinians proclaimed the need to cordon off the Al-Aqsa Mosque for protection from the IDF. Yeah, this is obviously what seems to be happening right now. This is what started the uprising of the Gaza Strip, the Al-Aqsa Storm, Israel in the courts of fighting armed Palestinian militias in self-defense. Launches a rocket attack on the mosque. Okay, so they're saying that Israel would attack the mosque while fighting Palestinians. The mosque would collapse. The path to building the third temple was cleared, but 1 billion Muslims, of whom 50 million officially are in Europe, start an uprising now in the West itself. Civil war erupts in Europe. Some Europeans are on the side of the LGBT Soros and Atlanticist elites, and some make an alliance with Muslims on the model of Alain Soros and join the anti-liberal revolution. So that's what he's calling it. LGBT Soros, Atlanticist elites versus the Muslims. And I think a better way of describing it, a more, I would say, parsimonious, while being holistic way of describing it, is the Zionist versus anti-Zionist forces. The U.S. uses tactical nuclear weapons against Iran, and that's not out of the realm of possibility because the United States has shown clearly that they are willing to use nuclear weapons even when it's not necessary, such as in the case of Japan, where Japan was already on the cusp of surrendering anyways during World War II. Russia launches tactical nuclear strike against Ukraine, which seeks to cling to the West and provokes Moscow in every way possible. I don't know how likely that's actually going to occur. I don't know where Alexander Dugan's coming with that because Russia is clearly winning here. The United States cannot continue funding both Ukraine and Israel in their genocidal wars because Ukraine was in a genocidal war, killing off the Russian speakers before Russia intervened. So I don't know why Russia would do this. I don't agree with Alexander Dugan here. World War III erupts with the use of technical nuclear weapons. Russia finally makes up its mind and sides with the Muslims. I very strongly believe that's going to happen. China quietly attacks Taiwan, distracting the U.S. and NATO to a new target. India refrains from direct support the U.S. is counting on. The evening of history ceases to be languid. So I think if I was in charge of China, this would be a really great time to split America even further, because America is facing political pushback in Latin America. They're facing coups in Africa. They're facing the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023 in the Middle East. And they're facing in Eastern Europe a war between Russia and Ukraine. And so getting the United States stretched even thinner by pushing for Taiwan at this point, I think makes a lot of sense. But then at the same time, China is far more patient than I am. And so they may just still wait it out at this point, because at the end of the day, they're still going to win in the end. I just think for them, they have to balance. Do they want to push things now in order to support their allies who are going into direct conflict with the United States, or do they want to wait for the United States to collapse on its own so they can quietly reach their win conditions, their objectives? And I think they're going to have to intervene directly if it looks like their allies might lose. If not, they can just allow their allies to continue to fight this war against the United States while they patiently wait for a better opportunity. I don't know how that's going to look for them, because if everyone else pops off against the United States and the Zionist forces, it would hurt their reputation to not support those anti-Zionist forces. So we will see what happens there. I would understand either reaction from China, really, is what I'm trying to say. So we see the feminists, gay activists, and environmentalists demand an end to it all, but no one listens to them. Yeah, I've talked about that before. The West is forced to fight against all in the name of some goal it can no longer articulate. All the old theses about human rights, civil society, and other incantations have disappeared in the harsh reality of the coming total death. Elon Musk admits that he has completely stopped understanding what's happening. We're already seeing that on Twitter. Israel begins the construction of the third temple under attack from all sides. Only the Messiah can save the day. So the Messiah. All right, so that is a really interesting scenario from Alexander Dugan. I've talked about this a little bit before. His scenarios are, I think, mostly correct. I've told you where I disagree in some parts of this. So let's see what you have to think about this. Please provide us any comments, questions, concerns, critiques you have in the comment box below. Give us a thumbs up. It does help us in the algorithm. Subscribe to our channel on both YouTube and Rumble. We're getting more views on Rumble right now, despite having, I think it's like 30 times the amount of subscribers on YouTube. So we are clearly getting suppressed in the YouTube algorithm. That's okay, though. We have other channels, other outlets to get our news and coverage on. So please subscribe to us on YouTube and Rumble. And thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.